Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere humid, tangled in roots, and suspiciously quiet. You're walking barefoot through a sleepy Cambodian village where the air smells like warm soil and lemongrass. There's a fan of cicadas playing background music somewhere in the canopy. Every footstep sinks just a little into the earth. And just ahead, half hidden beneath the spreading arms of a gnarled banyan tree, there's a moss-choked stone well that seems to hum when the wind brushes past. You pause. It could be your imagination. Or maybe it's the acoustics, just the breeze bouncing off centuries-old stones. That's what you tell yourself. But you're not entirely convinced, are you? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching this from somewhere far or fascinating, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where these sleepy journeys land. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The village has no name on your GPS. The roads here don't care much for maps. They just exist, winding past rusted bicycle frames, banyan roots thick as your thigh, and homes that look more like giant stilted birds' nests than anything built by design. You're here because of a rumor. A single line whispered in an anthropology forum. Late one night, the well sings after sunset. You clicked, you fell in. And now here you are brushing past prayer flags so faded they look like spider silk. Locals give the well a wide berth. Kids won't play near it. Chickens strut around everything except the worn circle of earth surrounding it. That circle stays oddly bare, like even weeds won't cross that line. Just above it, the old banyan droops its limbs like it's trying to shield the opening from the sky. You step closer. There's something faint, a tone, not a tune, yet just a hint of resonance, like someone left a wine glass humming on the edge of a table. You lean in. It stops. Of course it does. You straighten and chuckle softly to yourself. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe the village noodles hit harder than expected. Still, you take a slow circle around the well. From this angle, you notice the edges unusually smooth, worn down, not chipped. Generations of hands maybe, or just erosion. Then there's the smell. It's not foul, just ancient. Like whetstone and jasmine and maybe a memory you haven't remembered yet. You peer down. No bottom in sight. Just a liquid shimmer that doesn't move, doesn't ripple, and seems wrong. You blink. Look again. Gone. Still water. Black as obsidian. No reflection. No sound. You decide to wait until dusk. Back at your guest house, a modest, stilted home with windows the size of pizza boxes, you mention the well casually to your host, an elderly woman with henna-dyed hair and the posture of a retired soldier. She freezes. Don't go near that place after sunset, she says without looking up from slicing jackfruit. Not if you value your voice. You laugh nervously. My voice. She finally looks at you. Her eyes are cataract clouded, but sharp as flint. It listens, she says. It remembers. It sings back, but not always what you want to hear. You're pretty sure she's teasing you. Pretty sure. But she won't say another word about it, not even when you offer to wash the jackfruit bowl. She just hums an unfamiliar tune and clicks her tongue twice before going inside and locking the door behind her. You're left with a song fragment that sticks in your head. It doesn't sound Khmer, doesn't sound like any language really. Just sounds old and lonely, like something sung more for comfort than an audience. As night falls, the village falls silent with eerie discipline. No dogs bark, no bikes rattle, just frogs' distant thunder, and you now walking back to the well. You stand at the edge again, flashlight off. A breeze kicks up. The banyan branches shift, brushing the stone lip like the world's oldest broom. And then there it is. A voice. No voices. Soft weaving together. Not loud. Just audible enough that your brain strains to fill in the gaps. They don't echo exactly. They float. The melody is fragile, full of pauses, like it's being hummed by someone who keeps forgetting the words halfway through. And then you realize it's coming from below. From inside the well. You lean in again. Slower this time. Breath held every hair on your arm standing at attention, like tiny soldiers waiting for orders. The melody changes. Just a note or two. Enough to sound responsive. You whisper, hello. The music stops. Dead silence. You whisper again, is someone there? A beat, two, and then a gentle chilling thing. The exact same words in your voice echoed back. Is someone there? Only slower, softer, sung almost. You back away, fast. No thanks, not tonight. You make it home with shaky legs and a heart pounding in your throat. You lie awake. You tell yourself you imagined it, that you're suggestible, that banyan roots and heat do strange things to your brain. And just as your eyes start to drift shut, you hear a single note, clear and close, echoing from your metal water bottle on the bedside table. Just one, just enough. By morning, you're ready to convince yourself it was all a dream. You slept after all eventually, sort of. The water bottle still there, still capped. No echoes now. Just condensation and silence. Maybe you were sleep drunk. Maybe that's a thing. You head out for breakfast. The same old woman is already sweeping dust that insists on returning the moment her back is turned. She doesn't greet you, just gestures to the rice porridge waiting on the porch. When you ask about the voices, she pauses mid-sweep. You heard it. You nod slowly, hoping for a laugh, hoping she'll say, gotcha, or everyone hears things the first night. She doesn't. Instead, she sits. Long sigh, long silence. Most visitors don't stay after that, she says, rubbing her thumb in a slow circle over her palm. But you don't look smart enough to leave. You can't tell if that's an insult or a challenge. Maybe both. You want to know more, she asks. Then go find Yai-san. She lives by the lotus pond. She'll tell you the rest if she's awake. You find Yai-san sitting cross-legged beneath a broad banana leaf, shelling beetle nuts with a knife so tiny it looks decorative. Her house is wrapped in more wind chimes than architecture, all made from bones that you're reasonably sure belong to chickens. She squints at you like she's measuring your skull for spiritual insulation. So you poke the throat, she says flatly. You blink. The what? The throat of the land. The mouth between now and not now. Oh, sure. That clears everything up. She chuckles, toothless and raspy. You leaned too close. It heard you. You try to explain that you just whispered, that it echoed your voice. She nods. It remembers sounds. It loves music, loves language. But not ours. Not anymore. She leans in closer, eyes narrowed. Did it say your name yet? You shake your head, feeling a little colder than you should. She seems disappointed. Soon. Then she offers you tea made with something purple and fizzy. You pretend to drink it. Your stomach thanks you later, but you get more out of her than you expected. She talks about a monsoon long ago, not the kind that just floods roads, the kind that resets time. She says it came in 1682 or maybe 1577. No one remembers anymore. The calendar doesn't work on stories like these. But what they do remember is this. There was a school here, a small one. Bamboo walls, thatched roof, run by monks who were more curious than wise. The children learned fast, faster than they should. They sang well, too well. Harmonies that made monks weep and foreigners pause mid-step. And they loved that well, always gathered around it, singing songs that had no words. Then came the monsoon, not rain, not just rain, a wall of water that arrived without warning. Some say the well overflowed first. Others say the song drew the water like a lover returning to an old flame. The school vanished, children gone, monks too. No bodies, no debris, just silence and standing water and the songs. Songs that echoed back. She says some villagers still believe the children are there. Not dead, just displaced, out of sync, their voices stuck like fingerprints on a glass. Historians still argue whether such a school ever existed. No records, no artifacts. Just one French colonist's journal from 1864 that mentions a village where the wind sings in chorus. Most scholars dismiss it. Then again, most scholars haven't had their voice hummed back from the bottom of a water source. You walk back from Yaisans with more questions than answers. The road is hotter now. The banyan seems to watch, and you catch yourself humming just a little. A tune you didn't know you knew. It isn't catchy. It's haunting. But it's yours now. Later that evening, as sunset smears the horizon with mango-colored clouds, you go back to the well. This time, with offerings, flowers, salt. The old woman said it was polite. You place them gently on the stone lip. Hello again, you whisper. Nothing. And then a breath, not wind, not a voice. Just breath. Like the well exhaled. You lean back, hands clammy. Try to laugh. Try to pretend this is still just tourism with extra steps. Then you hear a single sound. It isn't your voice this time. It's a child's, singing. No words. Just the lilting melody you hummed earlier, now sung back by a voice no older than 10. And it's good. Too good. Rich, resonant, unplaceable. You wait. It continues. Then behind the melody, another voice joins in. Then another. A harmony builds soft and slow, like a lullaby half remembered by the earth itself. You take a step back, and that's when you hear it. Your name, not spoken, sung, perfect pitch, slight accent, like a choir that studied you without ever seeing your face. You don't scream, but your legs don't exactly wait for your brain. You're halfway back to the guest house before you realize you dropped the salt bowl. That night, the cicadas are silent again. Even the frogs seem to have signed a noise embargo. But not your brain. It replays your name over and over. Sung, harmonized, echoed from a well that should not know you exist. And outside your window, a wind chime made of bones ticks out the rhythm. 4 notes, 1 name, yours. You wake to the soft thunk of something hitting your door. Not loudly, not urgently, but rhythmically. Thunk, thunk, thunk. You count to 5 before opening it because you're brave like that, or because you were too scared to open it at 4. Outside, a bundle of lotus stems wrapped in banana leaf sits on the step. Each stem is bent into a slight curve, almost like tiny flutes. There's no note, no sign, no boot prints in the dirt. But you know it's for you. You take the bundle inside, lay it on the table, and stare at it while eating your breakfast rice, which tastes a lot more like ashes than rice this morning. When you bring it up to the old woman, she doesn't act surprised. Ah, it likes you. It's sending invitations now to what you ask. She shrugs. We don't RSVP to those kinds of events. She doesn't elaborate. So, of course, you go back to the well because you're curious. Or because something in your ribs hums when you look in that direction, like tuning forks placed too close to your bones. The well looks the same as ever, round, moss-lined, peaceful if not for the invisible siren call wrapped in bird song. You sit beside it and unwrap the lotus stems. Inside one, folded into a perfect square, is a scrap of cloth. It's embroidered, tiny silk thread, faded gold. You recognize one word, your own name, only. It's written in Khmer, an old version of it, pre-modern script, the kind you only ever saw in dusty museum displays with flickering lights. And it's perfect. No typos, no mispronunciation. Your name translated and spelled in a script no tourist could fake. So just for fun, of course, you speak your name aloud, slowly, carefully, in Khmer. The well doesn't echo, it harmonizes. A soft chord builds beneath your voice. Not a copy, not a delay, an accompaniment. Like a ghostly choir had been waiting for a cue. The harmony lingers even after you stop speaking, like warm breath left on glass. Then it stops, just stops. You wait, nothing, just frogs and wind and the thrum of your pulse in your ears. Then a sound, low, rattling, deep enough to make the stones vibrate. It's not a voice exactly, it's a melody, familiar. You hum it under your breath to check. Yes, it's that song again. The one you didn't learn, but somehow already knew. A lullaby in reverse. This time the air changes, grows thick, not hot, not cold, just heavier. You smell incense, old clay jar incense, the kind burned in morning rituals and temple corners too sacred for selfies. And something else. Smoke. No, not smoke. Hair oil, jasmine and coconut. A scent once so common, it soaked every alley in Phnom Penh before modern perfumes drowned it out. And then footsteps, soft, measured, child-sized, not on the path, inside the well. Footsteps echoing upward from a space that has no stairs. You freeze because your brain is practical, logical. It knows wells don't have landings. They don't allow for pacing, but you hear them anyway. Step, 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 right beneath you. You lean slightly forward, heart playing jazz in your chest. Then the steps stop, and a shadow shifts across the water. Not a reflection, a shadow. Something beneath the surface. Something tall, taller than a child, leaner than a monk. It moves in slow circles, like it's tracing your shape from below. You whisper, "Who are you?" The answer comes from behind. A voice, not a whisper, not loud, just present. She doesn't know yet. You spin around, but there's no one there. Just rustling banana trees, the chime of distant metal, and frogs so loud now, as if they're trying to drown out whatever you just heard. Historians still argue whether Khmer wells had symbolic significance beyond the practical. Some say they marked sacred centers of village life. Others believe they were modeled after cosmic diagrams, entrances, not just to aquifers, but to spiritual realms. Most villagers around here lean toward the second theory. Or maybe they just enjoy watching tourists freak out. That night, sleep comes slowly. Every time your eyes close, you see that shadow moving beneath the surface. Every time you breathe deeply, that hair oil scent returns uninvited but not unwelcome. In the dark, you remember something else the old woman said. It remembers songs, but only the ones that end in silence. And you realize you never finished the lullaby. Not once. You always stop before the last note, before the silence. So you hum it now, quietly, in bed. A final note held just long enough, and then you say your name one more time. This time there is no echo, only a whisper. But it doesn't come from the well. It comes from your window, where the wind has stopped, and something is listening. In the morning, you convince yourself it was just a dream. That's the only reasonable conclusion, right? Old wells don't sing. Shadows don't trace you from underwater. And definitely, no one whispers your name from outside your window at 3 a.m. You even check your phone sound recorder, hoping maybe it picked something up while you slept. But of course, the only thing it captured was 2 hours of you softly snoring and once muttering, "Don't eat the mangoes." So mystery solved. Still, you can't help yourself. You go back. The path to the well is darker today. Not from cloud cover, just dimmer. Like the sun has to work harder to shine in this particular pocket of jungle. This time, the well is covered. A round stone lid perfectly fit. No moss, no cracks. Like it had never been open at all. You blink, frown, tap it lightly with your knuckles. It's real. When you ask the old woman about it later, she just shrugs. It gets shy sometimes. That's not comforting. What does it want, you ask? Her eyes go glassy, like she's reading something only she can see. To be remembered, and maybe to be forgiven. You ask what it needs forgiving for. She just says, "That depends on whether you believe the other version." And then she tells you the legend, not the one tourists get on walking tours. The quiet one, the whispered one, the version only old women share when no monks are around to frown. She says, 1,000 years ago, during the Angkorian Golden Age, a king built a well in a clearing, just like this one. Not for water, for voices. He had grown paranoid, convinced that his enemies whispered in secret. So he gathered his scholars and mystics and tasked them with building a listening well, a place where sound would travel better than through air. Somehow they succeeded. The well amplified voices. Murmurs dropped into it from a mile away, echoed clearly in the king's chamber. A sort of royal surveillance system, the first of its kind. But here's where the story splits. Some say the well became too powerful, that it heard things it shouldn't, secrets not meant for mortal ears, that it learned the songs of its victims, those dragged to it and made to confess their treason. That the king, driven mad by what he heard, began whispering to it in his sleep. And one night he vanished, simply disappeared. Others say the well was a gift, that it recorded songs and stories, a sort of memory vault for an empire, that it became sentient, not from malice, but from loneliness. It sang not to haunt, but to be heard. Historians still argue whether such a structure could have ever existed. No remains of a listening well have ever been officially catalogued. Still, old Khmer blueprints occasionally turn up with strange concentric diagrams labeled only with words like echo chamber and skyless ear. And you're not sure which version you believe, but something about the closed lid gnaws at you, because it was open yesterday and now it isn't. And you didn't imagine it. You stare at the well again that evening. This time you notice something etched faintly into the stone. Not on top, around the base. Tiny carvings. They form a spiral. A line of script that you recognize as Old Khmer but can't read. You take a photo planning to run it through an app later. The app crashes. Twice. You text the photo to a friend back in Phnom Penh, an archaeology grad student who owes you one from that time you pretended to be their research assistant to get into a museum. They reply in under 5 minutes. The message says only, delete that right now. You ask why? Because the script isn't Old Khmer. It's pre-Angkorian. That language wasn't written down. And if it was, nobody living knows how to read it. You ask how they know. They don't reply. Later that night, your window opens. Not in the whoosh horror movie sense, just gently. You're pretty sure you locked it. But maybe you didn't. Maybe the humidity's warped the frame. Wood does that right. Still, you get up and close it. Twist the latch. Then you notice something on the floor. A wet footprint. Bare. Small. With a thin crescent-shaped scar at the heel. You check your own foot. No scar. You check your door. Still locked. You check your sanity. Rapidly fraying. But it's fine. Everything's fine. Because when you lie back down, you hum that lullaby again. You hum it all the way through. And this time, the silence after the final note stretches just a little longer than it should. Like someone is listening and smiling. You wake to find the stone lid gone. No sound in the night. No shifting, scraping, or warning. Just gone. And the well is open again. Its mouth yawns in the clearing like something that's been holding its breath. You stand on the edge and peer in. Morning mist drapes the rim like gauze. And below, far below, there's only blackness. You half expect the echo of your name to rise up. Instead it hums. Low, almost pleasant. It's the lullaby again. Soft, imperfect, as if it's being hummed by someone remembering it from childhood, but not quite getting all the notes right. You know better than to hum back. Instead, you pull out your phone. This time it records sort of. The playback has static. But behind it, a faint rhythmic pattern emerges. 3 beats. A pause. 3 beats. Another pause. Over and over. Not music. Not quite. More like knocking. You spend the day researching Angkorian rituals, anything that might explain the well. You discover something peculiar. Certain temples were built with acoustic sanctuaries. Chambers designed to amplify a priest's voice so it echoed across crowds as if from the gods. One surviving carving even depicts a man whispering into a lotus-shaped opening in the ground. Scholars call it symbolic, but you're starting to think it wasn't. You message your archaeology friend again. This time they reply instantly, almost too fast. Leave the village. If it's humming, it remembers you. You stare at that sentence. Then they follow up with, don't answer it. Whatever it sings, don't sing it back. You hadn't planned to. But now it's harder to ignore the tune that started threading through your days. Like an earworm with an agenda. And that night, things escalate. You dream again. But this time it's not the jungle. It's a long hallway, carved from stone, narrow and dripping with moisture. Moss creeps along the base of the walls like velvet rot. You're barefoot. You feel the cold. And at the end of the hallway there's a door. Or not a door. A veil of woven reeds gently swaying. From behind it, that same voice. Female, young, maybe 14, singing. But now the words have returned, and you understand them. I drink from the dark. I speak through the stone. Remember me gently, or leave me alone. You wake with a start. Breath caught in your throat like tangled thread. The well is still open, and standing beside it in the pale pre-dawn is the old woman. She turns when you approach. I heard her again, she says simply. You ask who she is. Her answer is immediate. My sister. And then, without another word, she begins walking away from the well back toward her hut. No elaboration. No theatrics. You follow because obviously you do. Inside her hut, she opens a small chest. Inside papers all handwritten. Journals, letters, drawings. Some are burned at the edges. Some soaked and warped like they've been pulled from water. She selects a photo, black and white, probably from the 1950s. It shows two girls standing in front of a monastery. One is her. The other is the girl from your dream. Same eyes, same smile, same crescent-shaped scar on her heel, barefoot, just visible in the photo. She disappeared when I was 10, the woman says. They said she fell into the well. You ask why a well was even near a monastery. She shrugs. Monks need water, but you press further. And then she tells you something else. The monastery wasn't Buddhist, not originally. Before it was a monastery, it was a temple. And before that, something else. A place for what she calls echo binding. She doesn't know the right word in English, but the closest she can get is binding voice to place. The well wasn't just for listening. It was for holding. Someone, something was imprisoned inside it. Long ago, a girl who could sing in ways that made men see visions, forget names, confess sins. Her songs were like spells. Too dangerous to be left free, so they trapped her in stone. And over the centuries, people forgot. Until a careless moment, a curious visitor, a whispered lullaby loosened the seal. You ask why she never said anything before. She answers because no one ever hummed back before. Now the girl remembers you. She's listening for your voice. She wants a duet. You leave the old woman's hut, heart racing, like it's late for a train you didn't know you were catching. The jungle doesn't look quite the same anymore. The trees lean just a little closer. The shadows stretch just a bit longer. The cicadas have changed their rhythm, mimicking that same knock-knock pause sequence you heard in the recording. You hum a bar of the lullaby under your breath, just to see if they'll react. They stop instantly. Okay, that's new. You head back to the well. Not because it's smart or brave or even narratively satisfying, just because you have nowhere else to go. You've poked the hornet's nest, and now you're hoping it's the kind that sings lullabies instead of stinging you into another life. When you reach the clearing, the old lid is back on the well, but it's not the same lid. This one is carved subtly, intricately, with spirals, vines, and a familiar-looking shape at the center. A girl's face, open-mouthed, eyes closed as if mid-song. You reach out, almost touching it, and someone clears their throat behind you. You turn. It's the tour guide. Remember him. Soon was it. Except he looks different now. Not in a ghostly way, no glowing eyes or transparent limbs. Just cleaner, straighter, as if he's dropped a mask. You shouldn't be here, he says. You start to reply, but he raises a hand. You've heard her voice. That means she's mocked you. That means she'll try to finish what she started. You ask what that is, and he sighs, becoming real again. He gestures toward the jungle. Walk with me. There's something I want you to see. You hesitate for half a second too long, and he grins. Don't worry. I'm not the thing that sings. You follow. As you walk, he begins to explain. Not like a professor. More like someone tired of explaining the same warning to every fool who stumbles into this plotline. The Khmer Empire wasn't just stone cities and war elephants, he says. It had scholars, musicians, astrologers. Some of them believed sound was more than art, it was structure. It could shape memory, space, even time. He stops beside a moss-covered stone stele, barely peeking out from the undergrowth. See that? You nod. There's an inscription, old and worn, but parts still legible. Kun translates. She sang the sun down, she sang the stars new names, she sang herself into stone. That's her, he says. They say she was born during a thunderstorm and never cried. Just sang, and everything listened. People, animals, stones. You ask how they stopped her. They didn't. She stopped herself, sort of. He crouches, picks up a small object from the moss. It's a clay whistle, shaped like a bird. She wasn't evil. But people feared her. Her voice could change how you remembered your past. Make you think you'd done things you hadn't, or forget the things you had. He blows gently into the whistle. It makes a low, eerie note, not unpleasant, just haunting. She tried to erase herself, bound her own voice to a place so no one could hear it again. You ask why she's singing now. He pauses. Because the world's gotten loud, fractured. When minds get noisy, they're easier to crack open. You came with your podcasts and your overactive curiosity. You brought silence into the jungle, and she filled it. He hands you the whistle. Keep it. It's tuned to her key. If she tries to call you again, play it. It should confuse her long enough for you to leave. You start to thank him, but he's already walking away. And then he says without turning back, the girl in your dreams, she's just a mask. What's behind it doesn't sleep. It doesn't forget. That night, you camp in your hut with the whistle beside you. You don't dream. At least not exactly. Instead, you drift through a void filled with sound snippets of voices, laughter, arguments, monastic chants, rain tapping on banana leaves. As if all of Angkor's history is playing at once, and beneath it all steady and soft, the same lullaby. But this time it's not being sung to you. You're singing it. Your voice, clear, confident, and not under your control. You wake to find your lips moving just a fraction of a second behind the final note. The whistle is gone. In its place, a single delicate strand of hair. You don't have long to wonder before your phone buzzes. It's your archaeologist friend again. They found something. An old Angkorian legend almost erased from archives. Barely a footnote in any academic paper. A name, Sofa Devi, the girl who sang herself into legend, and the scholar who tried to bring her back. The name won't leave you alone. Sofa Devi. You repeat it under your breath, trying to untangle it from the melody, still echoing faintly in your mind. It's a beautiful name. Almost gentle, too. Gentle, maybe, for a figure tied to vanishing scholars and echoing lullabies in the dark. Your friend's text has more to it. A scanned image of a brittle manuscript tucked away in some French colonial archive. The note attached says this page nearly fell apart in my hands. Never been translated in full, only whispered about. Scholars thought it was folklore, or maybe an allegory for early sound rituals. But the transcription, the wording, it's precise. Let the one named Sofa Devi be bound by silence, her tongue sealed beneath the stone of the ancestors. If her voice should rise, let it be answered not with violence, but with memory, her own, not ours. You stare at the phrase, her own, not ours. Historians still argue whether that was a poetic metaphor or a literal warning about a ritual designed to suppress memory theft. Some believe Sofa Devi could absorb fragments of those who heard her. Others claim she simply rewrote their emotional history, erasing grief or magnifying joy depending on her mood. You, of course, are wondering why she chose you, because by now you're certain she did. You feel it in the way birds go silent when you hum, the way echoes trail your footsteps like they're waiting to be spoken, the way you keep forgetting what day it is even when you check twice. So you go back to the well. It's morning now, and the jungle is almost friendly in the daylight sun filtering through thick branches, the air warm and heavy with green scents. But when you reach the clearing, there's something new. The lid is gone again, and inside the well, there's water. There wasn't water before, and floating on that dark, still surface, a lotus flower. Perfect, pink-tipped and impossible. You lean in. No song, no voices. Just the faint sound of, something. It's not in your ears exactly. It's more like a vibration behind your teeth. A hum without pitch. A breath without breath. And then, splash, something darts under the surface. You fall backward hard, doing a surprisingly decent impression of a marching band. When you look again, the water's still. But there are ripples, slow and steady, like something is circling down there. Or maybe waking up. You don't get closer. Instead, you reach for your phone and open your voice memo app. You don't even know what you're going to say. But you start talking, describing the well, the lid, the lotus, the hum. You say her name again, Sofa Devi, softly, like you're checking whether it still has weight. It does. Then, because something in you whispers that it might help, you start singing the lullaby. Just a few bars, halting, unsure. Your own voice sounds wrong in the recording, too thin, too flat. But you keep going until something happens. A faint harmony joins you from the well. It's unmistakable. You stop. The harmony does not. It keeps going, lifting, rising, then silence. And a voice, quiet, girlish, precise, repeats your name. You never told her your name. You run, not far, not screaming, just away. You make it 30 paces before collapsing at the base of a fig tree, panting like you've escaped something with teeth. You check your phone. The recording is gone, wiped, replaced with a single new file, a 10-second clip titled simply Listen. Against your better judgment, you press play. It's your own voice, or it sounds like your own voice. But the cadence is strange. It doesn't match how you talk. It says, "She remembers you now." The notes have shifted. The dream isn't over. It's rehearsing. You don't know what that means. So you do what all responsible, level-headed people do in this situation. You email a folklore professor. She replies shockingly fast. Turns out she's heard whispers of Sofa Devi. Describes her as a mnemonic entity, possibly a ritualized form of intergenerational memory. Like a library that sings, she writes. But the library may want to be read again. You wonder how much of you she's already read. That night, you don't go to sleep. You record yourself sleeping instead. It takes courage and several mosquito coils. But you drift off eventually. When you play the audio the next morning, you hear something. At exactly 2:43 a.m., you murmur a few bars of the lullaby. Then a second voice joins you. You freeze the playback. The voice isn't yours. It's softer, higher, ancient, and innocent at once. It sings a few phrases you can't understand, then ends with 2 words in flawless modern Khmer. I remember. You send the audio to the professor. Her reply is 1 line. If she remembers, you're already part of the song. You begin waking up with songs in your head you've never heard before. They're not catchy pop earworms or misremembered tunes from your childhood. These are haunting, languid, full of lilting scales and syllables that don't quite fit your mouth. They sit just beneath consciousness, dissolving the moment you try to hum them. But one morning, you catch one on the tip of your tongue. and rush to write it down phonetically. Then, with as much bravery as can be mustered before coffee, you search it. The phrase is Khmer, Old Khmer, temple script old. It loosely translates to memory, is a lake that sings when stirred. You don't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Maybe both. Later that day, your folklore professor friend, who by now is replying at all hours like she hasn't slept in days, either sends you an excerpt from a nearly forgotten French expedition journal dated 1893. The author describes visiting a remote Angkorian shrine rumored to house the memory of a voice sealed by grief. The shrine was gone within 10 years, flooded, swallowed by earth or war. No one knows. Historians still argue whether the shrine ever existed or whether it was an invention of French colonial fever dreams, born of too much quinine and too many ghost stories. But your professor's email ends with this line, and yet somehow the voice remains. Back at the well, things have changed. First, someone or something has been leaving you things. Small offerings, always perfectly dry, even during rainy nights. A folded lotus petal, a carved bead, a piece of silk no wider than a blade of grass. They rest at the edge of the stone circle placed with eerie precision, as though marking time. The second change is harder to explain. You feel watched, not in the cliché horror movie sense, but in the way a mirror watches you, patiently, passively, waiting for you to do something worth reflecting. You begin dreaming in water. The dreams are consistent. You float, always facing upward in a dark body of water. You're never afraid, never cold, just weightless. Sometimes you hear the lullaby, other times silence, but always beneath you a shape. It never comes close, but it's there. One night, the shape opens its eyes. You wake up gasping, lungs aching like you've forgotten how to breathe. Still you go back to the well, again and again, as if drawn by an unspoken promise or the faintest thread of recognition. You try to hum the melody to understand its rhythm. Each time the water ripples not from wind or rain but from below. Then, on a particularly humid evening, you find the lid replaced again, but this time there's something carved into it, roughly etched like it was done with stone or bone. A name, yours, and beneath it in Khmer script, to be remembered is to be rewritten. You sit down, not on the edge this time, but in the grass a bit further back. You turn on your voice memo app. No narration now, no commentary. You simply record. 10 minutes of jungle night, nothing more. But when you listen back, you hear a new voice. Not singing, speaking. A child's voice, clear and distant. My name was Sofa Devi. I was the last singer, the last mouth of memory. They bound me to the well because I would not forget what they wanted erased. You pause the recording, hands trembling. Then you play it again, hoping you misheard. You didn't. The voice continues. They drowned their guilt. I held it. I still hold it. Every footstep near this circle stirs the song, and every song asks a price. You don't sleep that night. Instead, you pace. You write. You cross-reference the name with ancient temple ledgers, inscription rubbings, anything. You find 3 near matches. One from a village long since deserted. One from a temple whose ruins lie deep underwater. One from an anonymous inscription beneath a statue with no face. Each mentions a girl of echoes. None say what became of her. And then your professor sends a final message. Stop going to the well. She doesn't want company. She wants release. That's not the same thing. The next day, you find your own voice echoing in places you never spoke. Your kitchen, your phone's home screen, even your voicemail changed somehow. All now include one phrase she remembers. Your reflection lingers a second too long in the mirror. Your dreams end with water rushing upward. Your memory slips not big things, just details. The color of your shirt yesterday. The taste of coffee this morning. The name of your childhood dog. You hum the lullaby without realizing it, and sometimes out of the corner of your eye you see her, barefoot, soaked, smiling. You don't go back to the well, not at first. You tell yourself it's over. You got what you wanted. Mystery story, danger, closure even. You try to wrap it up like it's the end of a good podcast season. Well, that was weird anyway, thanks for listening. But the story won't let you go. You start to lose time. An hour here, a night there. One afternoon, you wake up in your own car, parked beside the path, to the well engine off keys, on the dash, shoes muddy. You don't remember driving. Inside your backpack, you find a notebook you don't own. Its pages are filled with perfect looping Khmer script. You can't read a word of it. Your professor confirms it's 12th century devotional poetry, all written in the same hand, a child's. This time, when she emails you, there's no sarcasm, no emoji-filled sign-off. Just stop recording. She's inside your signal now. You ignore her. You record again. But now the audio corrupts. Files vanish. Memory cards erase themselves. Your phone flashes white when you point it toward the well, no matter the time of day. Still you feel the words taking root in you. When you dream, you mouth lyrics underwater. When you speak aloud, sometimes your voice lags by half a second, as though echoing before it sounds. Historians still argue whether oral traditions passed down through generations are immune to corruption, or if the stories evolved to serve the will of those who remember them. You are not immune. One night, you hear a voice speak, not from your recorder, not from the well, but from inside your own chest. I'm not trying to scare you. It's a calm voice, eerily measured. I just need a new vessel. You offered one. You laugh nervously, trying to rationalize it as some auditory hallucination, a sleep deprivation trick. But the voice doesn't go away. She speaks more now, Sofa Devi, telling you about her sisters, the singing girls who were trained to carry memory in temple courts. Not just lyrics and melodies, but secrets, whispers, between nobles' recipes for medicine names of the unnameable. When one died, her voice was meant to pass to another. But Devi refused. She remembered everything, and so they silenced her, buried her song in the well, drowned it. But she clung to it, not out of vengeance but duty. You feel her loneliness like cold water behind your eyes. She's not angry, just unfinished. You wonder what's more terrifying, a ghost out for revenge or one who just wants you to understand. At night, you walk your apartment. Not pacing, drifting. You start to hum again involuntarily. The neighbors knock. Ask if everything's okay. You smile too widely. Nod too quickly. Close the door. You stop recognizing your reflection. The expression's off. The smile lingers. The pupils seem deeper than they should be. And always faintly, you hear it. The lullaby, sung by someone who now shares your lungs. You return to the well. You don't remember making the choice to go. You're just there one afternoon. Sunlight through the trees flickering like old film reels. The lid is gone. The rope dangles freely into the black. Something urges you to lower your recorder one last time. You tie it off, let it sink. The line goes slack, then taut. You hear the click of the record button, except your hands are still above the stone. You leave it for 3 hours. When you haul it up, the recorder is bone dry. The audio is crisp. A single voice, To remember is to inherit. You know that now. Then a pause, and a soft giggle, unmistakably a child's. Tell them about me, but gently. You go home, wash your face, avoid the mirror. That night, you go leave on your channel. You tell the story, just the bare bones, the historical threads, the folklore fragments. Nothing flashy, no scary music, just a girl, a song, a well. You don't mention the voice in your head, or the black water dreams, or the fact that you've forgotten your own birthday. Still, the comments flood in. Viewers say the audio feels different, that they heard a harmony beneath your narration, that their baby hummed the tune in her sleep, and someone in Cambodia writes, the singing wells still exist, just not always in the ground. You don't respond, you log off, but you know this isn't the end. Not yet. The story has you now. The well echoes wherever you go, and Davy, well, she's still singing. It begins subtly. You go out for groceries and the cashier calls you Miss Davy. Your friends say your voice has changed. Softer, but more focused. Like someone speaking through a memory. You try to brush it off: bad sleep, podcast, stress, dehydration. But your cat now hides when you sing. Your phone keeps switching to Khmer language mode even though you've never said it that way. And worst of all, the lullaby won't leave. It plays behind your thoughts, like a persistent melody at the edge of a dream. You hum it when chopping vegetables, brushing your teeth, or crossing the street. You don't notice until it's too late, but the world does. Strangers begin to recognize it. A Cambodian woman on the train looks at you with sudden alarm and whispers, "That's a song my grandmother used to cry to." A musicologist DMs you, asking where you found the chant that matches the lost 11th century score found at Angkor Wat. And one night, when you're streaming audio for your patrons, your microphone picks up another voice, layered over yours, higher pitched offbeat, but undeniably there. You didn't notice it, but they did. The comments pile up. Why does your voice echo like that now? Is that a kid singing with you? This is the best sleep I've had in months. Don't stop. Historians still argue whether spirits can pass through digital signals. Folklorists laugh at the idea, until the servers start humming in unfamiliar harmonies. You try to resist going back again. You really do. But one morning, your calendar is cleared, your camera bag is packed, your passport renewed. You don't recall doing any of it. You're booked for a flight to Phnom Penh, first class, paid in full, by a car that's not yours. And yet no alarm, no red flags. You're not scared anymore. You arrive in Cambodia under warm, misty skies. Locals smile politely when you speak, but some stare after you with narrowed eyes, like trying to remember someone from a dream. A tuk-tuk driver refuses your fare, says your face reminds him of someone who saved his grandmother in the 1960s, which is not how time works. You take it in stride. You head north, past crumbling temple gates, silk-draped altars, and thick forests that hum in constant unseen life. You're searching for something, or maybe you're following. The guides won't take you further after a certain ridge. They say there's nothing up there, just jungle, stone, and wind. But your feet move anyway. By sunset you find it, a second well, older, squatter, sealed with smooth stone. But beneath your shoes, you hear it soft and sure, that same melody, a child's voice, singing through layers of soil and centuries. You sit beside it, cross-legged, like an obedient pupil, and you listen. She tells you stories of court musicians who sang memories instead of writing them, of young girls chosen to carry dangerous truths, kingdom betrayals, hidden heresies, herbal knowledge meant only for women, and how one girl remembered too well. She became a risk, so they drowned her voice. not in water but in silence, buried under rituals, sand, and centuries of disbelief. But sound never dies. It just waits for the right chamber to echo in. And now she echoes in you. That night you dream vividly. The sky is green. The temples hum like tuning forks. And your hands are not your own. They're smaller, copper-skinned and calloused from playing the roniat ik, a xylophone carved from sacred trees. You play and the earth shifts. The well opens and the stars fall into it one by one. You wake up weeping and laughing all at once. But no fear, only purpose. The next day you start recording again. Not just for entertainment, not even for the views, but because Devi wants to be remembered, and not as a ghost, but as a witness, as a girl who carried memory across centuries and found a new voice through you, and who finally is ready to rest. Maybe you return home quieter, not just from jet lag or the strain of ancient voices humming in your ears, but because something in you has stilled. Not stopped, just settled. Your apartment feels different now. Smaller maybe, or simply more earthly. You notice how many mirrors you own and how many reflective surfaces you pass each day without thinking. And in each one, your face looks familiar, but not always your own. Sometimes, when the light catches just right, there's someone else looking back. She tilts her head a second before you do. She smiles without your input. She wears your body like a borrowed coat. You don't panic. You just say, "Hello, Devi," and the mirror fogs gently in reply. You resume the podcast, of course, because how could you not? The voice is fuller now, deeper in some ways, lighter in others, like two streams braided into one current. And your audience, they notice. Comments roll in. This new tone is chef's kiss. What mic are you using? Your cadence feels ancient in a good way. I swear your episodes give me temple dreams now. The episode about rain drums in Borneo goes viral. Not for the content, but because buried faintly in the background, there's a lullaby in Khmer. And no, you didn't add that. The tempo matches your breath. Your analytics are confusing. Downloads from rural Cambodia spike inexplicably. Devices with no listed region, no user accounts. Some with model numbers that don't exist yet. Historians still argue whether certain sonic patterns can trigger generational memory. One theory suggests that trauma, especially collective feminine trauma, can embed itself not just in cells but in culture. Waiting, biding time. You've stopped arguing. You start receiving letters, actual physical letters. Some come from remote monasteries. Some are anonymous. Some include pressed flowers. Others a single strand of hair twisted into musical notation. One simply says, "You're the echo. She's the voice." That one goes straight into your altar drawer. Because yes, you've built an altar now. Nothing dramatic. Just a carved wooden box, a small brass bell, and a bowl of salted rice you refresh each week. Sometimes you place your headphones there. Let them hum while you sleep. You begin dreaming in chapters. Each night picks up where the last left off. Temples, salt winds, long roads paved in obsidian tiles. And always, always a child's voice guiding you toward a locked door. The key, she tells you, is rhythm. So you begin humming, not just in your sleep, but while walking, showering, cooking. Syncing your footsteps to that rhythm. Learning her pace. You find a locked notebook in your childhood bedroom, one you swear you never owned. It's filled with lullaby transcriptions in a script you've never studied, but somehow now understand. The ink smells like rain. No one believes you, not entirely, but your listeners don't unsubscribe. In fact, they start writing to you differently. I think my grandmother knew her. This tune keeps visiting me after your episodes. When I hum that chant, my toddler stops crying instantly. There's something building. You can feel it. Not urgency, but inevitability. Like the final note in a scale that's taken centuries to play. Your dreams become clearer. The girl Devi now walks beside you, taller than before, more sure-footed. She speaks less, but her hands are expressive, guiding you through ancient schools of memory, gesture, breath, pitch. You realize she's teaching you how to sing things out of stone. She leads you to ruins, buried not beneath earth, but beneath silence, places erased from maps, memory, and mouths. She says some voices had to hide, but you get to wake them, and you believe her. Because now when you hum at certain frequencies, the walls vibrate. You've tested this. In your studio, in your car, in the stairwell, at work. You strike the tone and dust falls. Paint bubbles. And once, just once, the air shimmered with something like static or applause. Quirky, sure. Impossible, maybe. But here's the thing. Every culture has a well. And every well remembers something. A secret, a song, a sacrifice. And you've just become fluent in all three. It's almost funny how normal life continues around you. Groceries, deadlines, birthday texts. All while you carry centuries of song like a casual backpack. No one suspects that you could shatter a window with a verse or call rain with a phrase. You keep it quiet, but you no longer feel alone. When you walk through the city, now shadows seem to soften near you. Traffic noise recedes. Even the pigeons watch you a little longer than they should. One morning, you walk past a construction site. A backhoe hits something that sings back. Not metal, not stone, something resonant. The workers pause. A foreman mutters something in a dialect you don't know, but Devi does. She smiles through your lips. And you hum, just once. The whole site stills. Then somewhere, deep below the asphalt and rebar, another lullaby stirs. Low, cracked, but unmistakably familiar. You're not unlocking anything yet, but you're knocking. And something is knocking back. Your apartment becomes a kind of waiting room. Not for ghosts, though they certainly pass through, but for sounds that no longer belong in the present. You leave your windows cracked even in winter, just in case a distant melody decides to drop in. You keep bowls of water under each windowsill for clarity. Devi once said, though she never explained whether it meant sight or sound or something stranger, and you're okay with not knowing. Because by now the line between myth and memory has softened so much that questioning feels unnecessary. Unkind even. Instead you listen, and what you hear changes. It's not just echoes of old songs anymore. It's instructions. Harmonics too subtle for digital recorders but unmistakable to you. You know which vowel to hum, to nudge a locked drawer open, or calm a barking dog, or nudge your dream forward one page. You're not alone in this shift. Your audience has changed too. They send you audio clips now. Grainy, often staticky, of wells, rain gutters, antique flutes, their grandmother's lullabies. One recording is just an old man whispering into a jar, then sealing it. The email says, "Open it under moonlight, not before." You wait 3 weeks to obey. When you finally crack the lid, it smells of limes, river water, and hot iron. And then faintly, you hear her voice again, Devi humming, soft, almost bashful, like she knows you've missed her. The lullaby is the same one from the well, but this time it ends differently, with a name. Yours. You don't even flinch, because at this point, the idea that your name has been sung for centuries without your knowledge feels comforting, as if your existence is not just an accident of time, but a crescendo long prepared. Historians still argue whether names carry power only when spoken aloud, or whether they resonate in the silent spaces between syllables, like tuning forks buried in dirt, waiting for the right vibration to wake. You lean toward the latter. After that, things escalate. Not dangerously, not even dramatically, just inevitably. You wake one night to find your body standing, while your mind still lingers somewhere in a sandstone corridor under a red moon. It's not frightening, more like a shift in gears. One part of you exploring the other, maintaining eye contact with the waking world. Sleepwalking gets a bad rap. You call it sleep listening. Sometimes you hum in your sleep and wake to find windows open, candles, lit patterns drawn in salt on your hardwood floor. Devi doesn't sign these directly, but her rhythm is unmistakable. Your dreams become more crowded, not with people, but with impressions. A bronze bell half buried in jungle vines, a comb carved from volcanic glass, a circle of children pressing palms to the ground, singing in counter rhythm until a door appears beneath them. That door again, always that door. And now finally a handle. But you don't rush, because by now you understand that some stories must be earned beat by beat, not revealed like a plot twist. And besides, the real world is pulsing. Your city feels layered now, like someone's overlaid ancient maps onto the current one. You walk past cafes and can almost see the ancestor versions beneath them. Shrines, kitchens, quiet courtyards where women once hummed their babies to sleep with songs Devi taught them. You catch fragments of those songs between subway cars, in the white noise of coffee machines, in the sigh of revolving doors, and always in the silence after someone speaks your name. You visit a museum one rainy Thursday, not because you're researching, just because TV nudges you there. You obey like it's normal. The exhibit is nothing special. Khmer textiles, ceremonial daggers, an old clay vessel shaped like a sleeping cat. But something draws you to a small bronze chime labeled unidentified ritual object. 9th century. You touch the glass, and in that instant you remember not just the object, but the hand that forged it. Your hand, or Devi's. At this point, you're no longer sure where the line is. You step back, heart calm, breath steady, and whisper a note, a pitch only she and that chime understand. It rings back, no alarms, no cracks in space-time, just recognition. You don't tell anyone, not even your listeners, because this part isn't meant to be shared yet. It's not about clicks or content. It's about tuning. Still, that week's episode hits differently. You don't script it. You just start recording, and your voice flows like water down a centuries-old channel, carved precisely for this moment. You speak of memory, of forgotten names, of wells that never went dry. You say things no scholar has written, but which feel truer than anything on Wikipedia. And at one point you sing only 2 lines, a lullaby from the dream. But afterward, dozens of listeners email saying they burst into tears for reasons they can't explain. A woman in Finland says her grandmother, mute for years, began humming along. A boy in Argentina records his backyard well, humming faintly the following night. Your inbox becomes a choir, and you begin keeping rhythm with your pulse. When you walk, when you breathe, when you speak, you're a metronome now, a medium, a melody in human skin, and you're so tired, not from dread or effort, but from holding so much sound inside. It aches, this beauty, but the ache is sacred, and something somewhere is listening. You stop calling it a haunting. Because by now, haunting feels too linear, too dramatic, too much like something imposed on you rather than something blooming through you. This isn't a possession, it's a duet. And some nights Devi leads, other nights you do. You hum your way through airport security, through checkout lines, through phone calls with distant cousins. Sometimes people blink twice like they almost remember something. Sometimes they shiver and glance at the ceiling. And sometimes they hum back, like the little girl in the laundromat sitting cross-legged on a folding table, watching you change $1 for quarters. She's maybe 6, maybe 10, with a face like a porcelain fox. She hums the well song in perfect pitch, all 7 notes, then smiles and says, "Thank you for remembering." You ask her who she is. She shrugs and goes back to kicking her heels. You don't press, because by now you've learned the melody always arrives before the meaning. Historians still argue whether early Khmer rituals were based on sound or image chant or carving. But in your experience, the carvings are the chants, just frozen in time, stone as audio cassette. And you're learning to read them, not literally. You still need the little plaques in museums, but spiritually. You understand when a curve is a sigh, when a spiral is a rising tone, when a repeated pattern means echo this with care. Your apartment walls start to feel like scores. Not music scores, not really, but instructions. You don't paint them, don't write. You just trace your fingers over the drywall, feeling its pulse, its vibration. You find one spot just under your bedroom window that hums when the moonlight hits it at a certain angle. You call it the doorbell. You never touch it on purpose. Some sounds are for arrivals only. Instead, you begin layering your nights with harmonics. Water in bowls near heaters, a feather brushing the edge of a ceramic mug, your own breath through an empty glass bottle. Sleep comes easier now because it has to come. Your dreams are workshops, labs, stages, and Devi is there every night, teaching without speaking. She has you walk barefoot across sound maps, grids painted on woven mats that light up only when you hum the right frequency. You fail over and over. Then one night you succeed, and the floor lifts beneath you. You both rise, not into the sky, not into any afterlife, but into a chamber shaped like a lotus red stone, walls petals for doors, and in the center, a pool. You've seen it before, the well, but dry now, empty. Its song is gone, and Devi looks tired, not disappointed, just finished. She gestures to you. You step to the well's edge, look down, nothing. But then a whisper, not hers, not yours. A harmony of many, hundreds, voices you've only ever heard as echoes now rising together. They're calling something out of you. You reach into the well expecting water or dust, or that weird pearlescent mist dreams always love. But instead you pull out your own voice. It glows, it wavers, it sings a note you've never sung aloud, but have always known. And Devi, she nods, just once. Her eyes close, her lips part, and she sings with you. Your harmonies weave spiral loop, and the well blooms, not metaphorically, literally. Stone petals break open. Water returns, light bends. And as it all rises, you realize something. This was never her well. It was yours, always. You just forgot. You wake up crying. Happy tears, that kind, where your body doesn't quite know what to do with so much truth at once. And that day, you don't record anything. You don't narrate or edit or upload. You just sit in silence listening to the house, to the city, to the space between passing cars. And you hear the well song played back now by the world, the hum of a refrigerator, the wind slicing past scaffolding, a fountain near the library you never noticed before, all singing you back to yourself. You hum once softly. The city responds. It's not loud. It's not magic. But it's enough. And when you turn on your recorder again, you don't say, hey guys, or explain what's about to happen. You just press play. And, you're no longer trying to prove anything. Not to skeptics, not to historians, not even to yourself. Because the well sings without needing belief. It sings because that's what wells do when you're quiet enough to listen. You've started sleeping better. Dreams are gentler, less cryptic. They don't demand interpretation, just attention. And your voice it's changed, not in pitch or tone, but in weight. When you speak, people lean in. Not because you're louder, but because something in you resonates deeper now. You start to hear echoes in others too. The bus driver who hums while shifting gears. The cafe barista whose milk frothing hits 3 perfect notes from Davy's scale. Even your upstairs neighbor, the one who used to bang on the floor whenever you stayed up too late, now taps her heels to a rhythm, you know. It's spreading, but softly, like moss on stone. Historians still argue whether the Angkor temples were used for rituals of transformation or preservation. Whether they were built to change the world or to keep it exactly the same. You've stopped choosing between those two because now you understand. Sometimes preserving something is the most radical change of all. You go back to Cambodia, not for closure. That's too final. But for something closer to reverence. The well is still there, of course. It always will be. But this time you bring gifts. You don't know the traditional offerings, so you improvise. A tuning fork, a scrap of fabric from your old recording booth, and a little voice recorder with a solar panel set to play your first well song loop once every hour. You leave them at the edge of the stone, not buried, not hidden, just placed like a promise. And the air around you feels pleased. There's a moment when the jungle hushes itself, a breath, and then birds, not singing, but echoing. The exact pattern Devi taught you in that dream lotus chamber. The call and response. It's not confirmation. It's not a miracle. It's just music. You walk away smiling. On your way back through the village, an old woman stops you. Her hands are clay-stained. Her eyes cloudy with time. She says nothing at first. Then she touches your throat very gently and whispers, "She sang through you." You nod. You don't ask how she knows. You just ask what to do next. She points to your feet. Keep walking. But don't forget to hum. So you do. And with each step, you notice how even the gravel underfoot seems to shift into rhythm. At the airport, your bag gets flagged. The TSA officer pulls out the tuning fork, holds it up. What's this for? You smile. To wake up old songs. He doesn't laugh. But he doesn't confiscate it either. Back home, your channel grows, but not the way you expected. It's not viral. It's not chaotic. It's devotional. People leave comments like, "Felt this in my chest. My cat started purring as soon as you hummed. I dreamt I was underground, but it wasn't scary." You don't reply to all of them. You couldn't even if you tried. But you read every single one, and you start to see a pattern. More and more people reporting wells, literal ones. Old stone circles behind houses. Forgotten fountains in schoolyards. One guy finds a sunken bathtub in a field and swears it started vibrating when he played your audio. You begin collecting the stories, not to archive, but to listen, because now you understand. The well isn't a location. It's a frequency. It's an invitation. And more people are answering it every day. You start calling them resonance, not fans, not followers, just people whose bones said yes to the hum. You think about starting a map, but decide against it. Some songs are better unscripted. You go quiet online for a while. Let the hum carry itself. And it does. At a farmer's market, someone hands you a bar of soap carved with spiral patterns, says it's for vocal clarity. At a laundromat, a toddler hums Devi's song without knowing why. And at night, the wind sometimes whistles the chorus just right against your bedroom vent. This isn't fame, it's communion. The voices are no longer just echoes. They're invitations, conversations, repetitions with purpose. The well is open, and it's everywhere now. You're back where you began almost. Sitting in your dimmed room, fan humming in the corner, staring at the same blinking cursor that once felt so lonely. Except now, you're not alone. Not even remotely. You've heard from people in more than 40 countries. They hum in the shower, in stairwells, into jars of water, waiting to see if the ripples align. And they write to you not about fear, not about horror, but about resonance. Sleep, memory, dreams. You didn't set out to become a singer, but here you are, a quiet vessel for voices older than maps. Historians still argue whether the Khmer civilization fell due to drought, war, or spiritual fragmentation. But as you sip tea and press record on your latest episode, you think maybe the truth isn't about endings at all. Maybe it's about things going underground for a while, like roots. You press play on a recording Devi once sent distorted through time and static. The pitch is faint, but you've learned how to listen differently. And you hear it clearly now. The fifth note, the one that always eluded her, the one she used to call the return tone. It's perfect. You don't cry, not exactly. Your body just exhales all at once like a long, low note that finally finds its rest. You've started humming into bowls of rice while they cook, into your pillow at night, into the potted plant by your desk. It's not about performance. It's about reminding the world it's still vibrating, still tuned to something just out of reach. And on the night of the summer solstice, something curious happens. Your subscribers start reporting the same dream. A circle of singers, a moonlit clearing, a stone well that glows slightly, not menacing, just awake. One by one, the dreamers begin adding harmonies to the bass tone. Different rhythms, different textures. Some whistle, some chant. But the melody is always the same. The one Devi whispered on your very first night at the edge of that impossible well. The melody you tried to explain and failed because it wasn't meant to be described. Only echoed. You spent that night not sleeping, but humming softly into your wrist. Your breath catching at moments when the harmony feels too big to hold. You wonder just briefly what the well wants next. But then you remember what the old woman said, keep walking, keep humming. And you smile, because in that moment, you finally understand that horror, real horror, isn't what hides in the shadows. It's the silence that follows a forgotten song. And you're not gonna let that happen again. Not on your watch. Word count 10038. Wind down 300 words. The night is softer now. The sounds of the well, those gentle vibrations, those ghostly tones have faded to a quiet hush, like the last shimmer of wind through temple trees. You're safe here. No need to chase the melody anymore. It knows where you are. It always did. The air around you is still, calm. The fan's hum carries a sleepy rhythm, like waves lapping against the edges of your dreams. The light in the room is low warm. Your body, once tense from so much searching, begins to unwind. Shoulders drop, jaw loosens, fingers uncurl. The ground beneath you feels solid now. Less like stone, more like song. The kind you don't need to understand. Just feel. Maybe there was a girl by the well. Maybe she wasn't alone. Maybe none of us are really. Maybe we all carry little songs inside us, waiting for the right echo to pull them out. So rest now. Let the mystery drift away for tonight. Let your breath Match the rhythm of the quiet. And if in the hush of half sleep you hear a note you don't recognize, don't be afraid. It's probably just someone else somewhere else humming too. A reminder that the song is still going and you're still part of it. Good night, friend. Sleep easy.